Okay.
The arrival of Kick...
There we go. All right. Fortnite's down. We're going to watch some fun videos.
The arrival of Kickstarter and the unfulfilled desire for exciting new MMOs combined with Unreal Engine's capability to make absolutely anything look beautiful was the perfect formula for the introduction of MMO scams into the world. Today we're going to talk about the 5 most interesting MMO scams to exist so far. We'll talk about how they came to be and perhaps most importantly, where they are now. Was it malice or ignorance that led to millions of dollars disappearing while having nothing to show for it? Which ones went to jail and which ones got away with it? And were we wrong about any of them? Let's find out. First up, Chronicles of Illyria. This was another fascinating one to follow, with a story that's going to start to sound very familiar as we go through this list. It all starts on Kickstarter, led by a man named Jeremy Walsh. Was it malice or ineptitude that caused this to play out the way that it did?
So we're clear, when you're making an MMO, it's not easy. For one, your game is in 2 parts. The part you download are the assets. The source code is on the server. They do it that way so when everyone logs into the server, everything in the game is synced up. You don't have to worry about that. Some MMOs do it the other way around. Some MMOs give you everything, and they just do like what's called the tick process, where like once every minute, it'll tick where you're at and save your stats to the server itself. Some MMOs do that. Not a whole lot. Most of them just do it this way. It's expensive because you have to supply the servers, and they're not cheap. Okay? That's why making an MMO is really hard. Now, there is a way to do it with peer-to-peer servers. The only problem is whoever the host is, that's who's running the server. So it's not really a good idea at all, but watch it.
Let me know down in the comments what you think. It all starts on September 18th, 2015. The first screenshot was shared on the company's Twitter feed. Remember what this looks like. It's going to be important because this is not what was delivered.
For a small project, no fucking way.
Then, ironically, on April 1st, 2016, the first gameplay footage is shown in a video titled Meet the Team. Again, remember what this footage looks like. Then, on May 3rd, 2016, Soulbound Studios announces its long-awaited Kickstarter campaign asking for just $900,000 and promising this. Aging, Dying, and Souls, an epic 10-year storyline invites you to experience your character over multiple lifetimes. With each life, you will develop your character and make your mark in the Chronicles. When your character eventually dies, their soul will be reincarnated stronger than before, and their...
To do this? No way. Even Fable couldn't pull this off. So I know how they could do it.
Spirit and destiny will live on in another character of your making. The game being described was on a scale never before seen. It was going to have every system and feature that you've ever wanted all rolled into one massive MMORPG, or at least that's what they told us. And apparently it worked. Just 1 month later, on June 3rd, 2016, they hit their Kickstarter goal, with 4 people going as far as donating $10,000 each so that they would be considered royalty in the game. At this point in 2016, Soulbound Studios claimed they would have the game in players' hands in just over 18 months. Not finished, but at least in a playable state. After raising $1 million on Kickstarter, Jeremy announced the game would continue to raise money on its own personal website. and raise money it did, to the tune of over $8 million. As the deadline for the game,
People were stupid back then. Oh, small studio can make a game like this. No. World of Warcraft costs like, I think, over $100 million, and that was in 2005. There's no way they're going to pull this off with that small budget.
approached in 2017, Jeremy announced that the game isn't going to meet the deadline he had promised due to their inability to attract talented developers. The first sign that things really weren't going well. Fast forward to 2018, when everyone was originally expecting the game to be in a playable state, and it was not. In fact, no one had any proof that there was a playable game at all. No member of the public had played a single minute of it. Later in that year, November 2018, with over $6 million in funding secured, people were beginning to worry about the future of the game. They noticed it had been nearly 2 years since they saw any new footage of the game. Surely, with millions of dollars and years of work put into the game, there must be something impressive to show. Almost an
For a game like this, with these graphics, you're talking well over $200 million by the time this Kickstarter was going. There's no way.
Another year passes by, and on September 6, 2019, the first gameplay footage since 2017 is released. Remember when I told you to remember what the original gameplay footage would look like? This is what backers thought they were getting. No, it's what they were told they were getting, and this is what they got. To say that fans were disappointed would be an understatement of a lifetime. The game was now 2 years past its initial planned delivery date and 8 times over budget, and this was all they had to show for it. This was the result of 4 years of development and millions of dollars of backer money. It's here where most of the backers soured on the game, some going as far as to threaten
That looks like an $8 million game. MMO? Yeah. That's about right.
legal action against Soulbound. On March 11, 2020, the Settlers of Illyria event would take place as a pre-alpha event to allow participation in a 45-day test of the game. Of course, this pre-alpha test included massive microtransactions to allow players to spend hundreds or even thousands of dollars buying plots of land within this unfinished game, if they wanted. Amazing! It was a disaster, players were not happy, and now, with a much more realistic idea of what this game was going to be, the funding for the game stopped coming in. In an event that was only surprising to the backers with their heads 6 feet under the sand, on March 25th, 2020, Soulbound announced the studio would be shuttering.
Damn, and it is about 2017, 2018. Do you think people would learn by that point? Nope. People just say, oh, fuck it, I'm going to donate to a small studio with amazing graphics because anybody could do that. No. You're not getting AAA quality out of a small studio like that. It takes an insane amount of work. If it was a single player game, maybe. But MMO, no fucking way.
April 6, 2020, however, there was an about face due to the threat of legal consequences. An FAQ appeared on the COE website stating that the game would very much be released and that they did not mean to imply it was shutting down. This was likely for legal reasons, as they had promised to deliver a game in exchange for the money they'd collected. To simply state that the game wasn't coming without refunding any of the money could leave them vulnerable to some legal action. With angry backers undeterred by this promise, on August 17, 2020, a class action lawsuit was filed demanding that Soulbound refund the money for the game that they failed to deliver. Soulbound would decline the demands to refund the backers, so on February 3rd, 2021, the case was legally filed with the court. Around the same time, Illyria was posting a couple of videos a month about the progress of the game, probably to appear as though they were still working on it. So where's the game now, 2 years after all of that? And how did the lawsuit end? Was justice served? Was the people's money returned? Was anyone held accountable for the complete mismanagement of the funds? Well, I wish I could say that the court laid the law down on this man and this practice of taking people's money without the realistic possibility of being able to deliver what was promised. I wish the court case had sent a signal to would-be Kickstarter scammers, but unfortunately the lawsuit was dismissed, and while
It was dismissed because you paid for a game. You got a game. Doesn't matter was the game was promised or not, and also due to Kickstarter's rules back then. Actually, no, it was 2022. maybe they were still the same, but when you back a game like that, this is what happens. This is why you don't back a game on Kickstarter. Unless it's an actual full demo and it seems right, yeah, you get that. But this, you back this. I'm sorry, you got what you paid for.
Escaped with everything except for his reputation. He's now working on a completely different game and a completely different engine known as Kingdoms of Illyria. My guess is this game has as much of a chance of turning into a polished, finished product as Chronicles of Illyria. Whatever you do, don't give Jeremy Walsh another dime of your money for a game that isn't yet complete, because it's probable he's selling you a bridge to nowhere. I'm not saying don't buy his game when it's finished, I'm just saying don't buy his game until it's finished.
I never backed the game on Kickstarter, just so we're clear. I'm glad I never did. And I'm careful with early access games. If it's promising, I'll back it. One early access game I'm still very pissed off about. I talked this before, I think. Was Second Extinction. It had Avalanche backing it. It was a good studio. They had a good product. It was basically Turok meets Destiny. It was amazing. 2023, the game got canceled. And they just basically finished it and they couldn't release it. I was fucking pissed.
Which is actually fantastic advice for any of the games on this list today. Next up, we have The Day Before. This is the most recent possible scam to be added to this list, and I say possible scam because it's not really confirmed yet. This story starts in January of 2021 when a developer known as Fantastic dropped the trailer for their upcoming title, The Day Before.
I took one look at this footage and I was like, nah. MMO? No. Single player? Sure. MMO? No. Some of these assets I think I've seen before in the Unreal Legends store, which I was already thinking like, yeah, it's not going to come out. If it does, I'll be surprised if it's any good.
It was announced as an open-world survival MMO set in a deadly post-pandemic America that has been overrun by flesh-hungry infected. It caught massive attention. The public was incredibly excited for this idea, so they announced that on March 31st, 2021, they would show everyone some gameplay footage. The day before it was set to air on March 30th, they ended up delaying the trailer a week due to technical problems. The new airing date would be a week later, April 6th, 9 a.m.
They delayed the trailer. How do you delay a trailer? There's a trailer. You make it, you put it out. That's it.
And so, on April 6th, everyone tuned in and were met with a starting soon screen. They would watch this screen for over 9 hours until the stream was finally shut down.
People, for some reason, like, want zombie games like this. I will never understand that. I will never understand it. Maybe I'm out of touch or something, but, like, I will never understand people who want, like, a zombie game that's realistic. I will never understand that shit because it's going to be hard, but it's going to be bullshit. So why would you even bother?
On April 9th, 2021, 13 minutes of gameplay was finally revealed. The 13 minutes of gameplay looked great as far as everyone could tell. It would look so great that the game would become the most wishlisted game on Steam, over top of games from AAA studios like Spider-Man, Stalker 2, and even Bethesda's Starfield. This caught people's attention. Fantastic accomplished this without having a great track record to stand on. Looking back at their history, they sold early access to their game called Wild 8 and then almost immediately abandoned it. They moved on to a game called Dead Dozen, which had even more problems. It went into early access and shut down completely 3 months later. Things kept getting weirder though. The trailer looked too good to be true, literally. Developers would even react to the video.
Yeah, that's how you know when, like, it's not going to be good. Like, with earlier projects and none of them panned out, it's like, they're not going to make even on this. There's too many things wrong with it.
Stating that at the very least, this looked like a vertical slice of the game that they had just created for the purposes of marketing it.
Is this in game?
The Day Before.
It is.
Oh my.
I'm getting very The Division vibes from this.
Wow, the shadows are incredible. The lighting is just excellent.
Told you,
Look at
show
this.
reflections.
Oh man.
In an MMO though, I'm skeptical.
I can explain the shadows and lighting in here. People still don't know this about developer builds. If you want to spend the money, you can build yourself a developer rig. I've got one. I've got a laptop, developer laptop. And by today's standards, it's just under the most powerful by today's standards. It's got well, the processor in it. The processors usually don't matter too much with developer builds. I got an i7 in my 9850H. And it works good. It's 6 cores, 12 threads, no big deal. The GPU is an NVIDIA Quadro RTX 5000, which is a $2,000 graphics card. And it's got 16 gigs of VRAM, and it could do a lot. And by normal GPU standards, it's still pretty high. And it's stuff like that they run their games like this on. Like, for example, that laptop is so powerful, when Doom Eternal dropped, it ran the game 30% faster than it was supposed to. If you're wondering why it's doing that, it's a developer GPU. They didn't have proper drivers for it yet. So it's running the game extra fast. So to the point where it's unplayable. I couldn't play it for months because I had to wait for a proper driver to come out. Okay, they use stuff like that to run games like this, so you look good. Same thing happened with Watch Dogs, why that game looks so good, and then they had to downgrade it dramatically to get it to run on anything other than a developer PC. So you can remember that when you see these builds. That's why I don't like gameplay like this. I just say, nah, I'm gonna wait. I want to see what the actual game looks like first before I even give it a shot.
How can they do that? I'm getting a feeling this has all been rendered. This is not.
I think it's more of a vertical slice on first impression. A vertical slice, if you don't know, is this doesn't mean that the whole game is done and it looks like this. This is probably a section that they popped out, and we're able to develop and carve out and make certain things look final when they're not. That's what happened with Watch Dogs. That's what happened with Cyberpunk.
Oh, Cyberpunk! I called that shit out early. I saw the demo sparked already controversy with me because here's the thing. The first problem with Cyberpunk was that, well, they made a trailer for when they started development. That's a huge red flag. Because it's like, why would you have a trailer when you just started development? That could have been just a post on a website. That's all that could have been. And then they made some claims to it, and I was like, this is going to turn bad. I can already tell it's going to turn bad. And the truth is, they didn't even start working on the game until after The Witcher came out, Witcher 3. So it was 2015 they started working on it. They didn't start working on it right away. They were doing the concept part of it by that. Then they started went all in on it. Then 2018 they finally revealed the game. And I'll be fair, the first trailer that they showed of the game, it looked amazing. I will be fair. It looked really, really good. I was like, okay, I might want to get into this. No problem. Then they dropped the claim that it's a first-person shooter game, but it was their very first FPS game. So I was like, okay. I'll give them a fair chance. I thought it would be more like kind of like GoldenEye, where the aim was automatic or something like that. Because they made a post after that. I don't know if you can find it anymore. It should be on a website somewhere, where they flat out said it's our very first FPS, but it's gonna be more RPG than shooter. Okay, I will hold them to that. They showed the first demo, which came out the following month. And it was all shooter shit. The first 12 minutes of the video was all shooter shit. And then it was driving, and then it was Far Cry, and it was Watch Dogs, it was GTA, and I was like, this is not what they promised. I clicked off right away. I knew it was going to be bad. So I was like, this is not what they're promising. Because remember this is the critical part. When a developer says more RPG than shooter, they need to show the RPG stuff first whenever they make a demo. They need to show the inventory, they need to show the level up system, the perks, all that stuff. They have to show that stuff first before you show anything else. That shows, okay, it's more RPG than shooter. They didn't do that and everyone bought into it. Then about 2 years later, I saw another trailer where the gunplay got really good, and I was like, no, I'll give it a fair shot. What the hell? It's not that bad. I did buy my copy at launch. I bought it just to laugh at it because I knew it was going to be a buggy mess. And then everyone way overreacted for it. And I was like, no shit. You didn't see this ahead of time? Don't get me wrong. It was wrong for them to release the game the way they did, but I saw this from a mile away. It was going to be a buggy mess one way because they were already lying about what was in the game. So it was like, come on. You know, and we're seeing the same thing with the day before.
A lot of it, so I'm a little skeptical.
Are about to get heated.
Over here.
Here's the thing, and this is why I think it's pre-baked.
Yeah.
See, that's supposed to be another player.
Right.
Can we go back? See the way they come in? It looks like it's an animated character that's not another player, but that means that those can't actually be other players.
It could be. It could very well be they have their own, AI players. They
to move
be.
like that, they would have to be AI, because if it was a real player, the animation wouldn't be that smooth. When you actually play a game, you're kind of jittery.
This by itself
that's
wasn't
true.
totally unheard of, but with this studio's history in mind, it starts.
The reason why it's jittery is because right now, like, you remember, like a CPU, either a console or a PC, it's only doing math. But the thing is, it's doing math of everything going on in the game world. Okay, it's doing the math of where the player's at, what they're doing, their inventory, everything else. But it has to keep track of the other players in the game also. Just like an MMO like this, no way. It's just the CPU cannot handle all this happening. Even on a server side, it still can't handle that much. You really have to try a lot of black magic to get that much out of it. And it's just not possible right now with the current architecture we got right now. So even with the graphics like this, he still couldn't do it because the CPU is going overload trying to keep at least 4 players on screen, or at least 2, let alone 1,000.
To cast doubt on the viability of the game being delivered as promised. Things would continue to get weirder when Fantastic used a bait and switch tactic on their fans, pretending a big new announcement was coming for the day before. And then when the announcement arrived, it was actually for a completely different game? Essentially using their clout they had gained for the hype around the day before to advertise and launch another game they were working on, called Prop Night. People weren't happy about it at all, but it was somewhat smoothed over when the studio also provided a launch date of June 21, 2022. At that time, that meant the game was just over 8 months away, so people were pretty excited. Fast forward to May 3rd, a little over a month before the game's scheduled launch date, Fantastic posted an announcement, letting the community know that they would be giving a big update about the game that week. And what was the big update they hyped up? The big update they got that week was that they were delaying the launch of the game another 9 months, into March of 2023. The reason for the delay?
9 months delay. That's a huge delay for a game you're working on for, what, 3-4 years by this point? That didn't sound right with me either. I'm like, really?
Well, there was such massive interest in the game that they wanted to spend more time making sure they got it right. Honestly, for a studio that had never seen this kind of interest, to look at its project landing at the top of the Steam wishlist and decide, hey, we better spend the time to get this right, well, it isn't all that surprising. Among the changes that would be made, they would be switching the game over from UE4 to UE5. This also isn't surprising, as we've seen multiple studios make the same move around the same time. So far, we have a lot of red flags that could be genuine mistakes or intentional deception, but there wasn't anything you could point at and say, these guys are definitely acting in bad faith. That was until they later posted a video asking for people to work on their game for free, as volunteers. Naturally, alarm bells were really sounding now. It was weird that the studio...
Notice they have braces on their teeth. I'm not making fun of their parents. I'm just like, oh, maybe they spend the money on that shit.
Studio was promising to deliver a game far, far beyond anything they'd ever created before. A game massive AAA studios are afraid to attempt because of the budget it demands. But people were willing to give them the benefit of the doubt until they had a reason not to. And for a lot of people, this was that reason. How are you going to make a game that by its very nature required a AAA budget, all while using unpaid volunteers? What kind of quality would that provide? And what kind of a studio do you have to be to even be willing to publicly ask for such things? If things weren't bizarre enough, on January 4th, 2023, Fantastic released another video on their YouTube that was a poorly hidden ad for another product they were developing, some kind of office app. The whole thing was pretending to be talking about the studio and its development of the day before, but actually it just felt like you were watching a really weird ad for some product. And that's because you were. They had now used their attention that they garnered for the day before to launch 2 other projects that were not the day before. And they had also tried to get people to work on their game for free, while also delaying the release date of the game twice. The longer the story goes on, the more the red flags pile up. And people noticed. They ended up having to turn off the comments and likes and dislikes on videos to hide the ire of the community. On the bright side, the game was going to be launching in just 3 months, so Fantastic's chance to vindicate themselves was fast approaching. That is, until it wasn't. On January 24th, 2023, the most wishlisted game on Steam was removed from Steam. In another twist, Fantastic would go on to say that it was a bug that caused it to be removed from the Steam store. But then Fantastic would later that same day post a separate post that contradicted.
I never heard of a bug keeping your game from posting on Steam. Like, already I call bullshit right there on top of the other bullshit we've seen up to this point, but let's keep going.
That, saying 5 days earlier they found out that someone owned the rights to the name the day before. Unfortunately for Fantastic, this also was a provable lie, as there was evidence that they had received word their trademark for the name had been rejected months prior. 2 different posts with 2 different lies in the same day from these guys didn't do a lot to maintain and restore the faith of the people excited for the day before. With the game not even out yet, all of the red flags, and now a trail of lies leaking out of the studio, things were getting weirder than ever. People were beginning to worry if this was even a real game at all. The only trailer they'd seen seemed to have been at best a vertical slice of the game, or at worst entirely pre-rendered. But that was all going to be a problem of the past though, as Fantastic was due to show their gameplay trailer featuring real gameplay this time. Then at the last second they canceled, stating that they needed to talk to their lawyers about their name being taken before releasing the trailer. The bad news didn't stop there. The trailer wasn't the only thing to be delayed. The game's launch was also going to be delayed again for another 6 months to November of 2023.
You're not supposed to say anything about the name being in question. You just fight the court in court, and if you lose, you change the name of the game. You don't say anything to the fan base about that first. If there really was a lawyer, they'd say, don't say shit. Let's wait till we settle this in court first. So already they're lying about that.
The internet was now crying scam. Everyone was beginning to think this game didn't exist. In response, Fantastic would turn around shortly thereafter and drop the gameplay trailer for the game. As expected, it didn't look nearly as good as the highly touched up trailer that came before it. And to be honest, the fact that it looked worse now wasn't surprising and isn't all that uncommon in the industry. They tend to show very early on a concept of what they are aiming to make that ends up being far more attractive than what they're actually able to deliver on down the road. We've seen a lot of AAA studios make this mistake in the past and then get rightfully called out on it by their communities afterwards. What was odd about this trailer was that the 10 minutes or so.
All right, see this? It's supposed to say to be determined. They put TDB. It's not of a studio. It's going to be called to be determined. They even misspelled that. It's the little stuff that gives it away.
On it by their communities afterwards. What was odd about this trailer was that the 10 minutes or so of gameplay showed a massive world that felt far from finished. It was devoid of action, a lot of walking, and not a lot going on, particularly for a game that was originally supposed to release a year ago. On top of that, viewers would also immediately notice that many of the assets in the game were purchased straight off of the Unreal Engine shop and set into the game nearly untouched. And then finally, to make things even weirder, the trailer even had sections that were an exact copy of other game trailers. In fact, it wasn't just trailers that were copies of other games. Even the game's logo was a copy of another game's logo, and so was its art. This game may still launch, but we would have to be ignoring an absolute ton of red flags to say with any level of confidence that the launch will go well. If it does end up being a scam, it will have been an impressive one, as it will be the first scam MMO to have achieved the status of most wishlisted game on Steam. I hope they prove all of the doubters wrong, but as of right now, history would suggest this game will be sold in early access before dropping in a state that is completely unfit for release.
So what this game was trying to do was do what's called, most gamers don't know this, what's called investor fraud. Now, investor fraud means people who are going to invest in the game because it gets a lot of publicity. So they'll get money from other people, not the community, but other people who are going to invest in this project, put more money into it, and then they take that money and they do whatever the fuck they want with it. Okay. It just ended up being way bigger than they thought it was going to be. And that's the reason why a lot of little tells started showing up. And then by the time the game came out, it was an extraction shooter, not an MMO. Because it did come out, and they got pulled from stores, pulled from Steam like 10 days after launch.
ultimately being abandoned by the developer yet again. Where is the game today? 2 launch delays later and 6 months before its newest scheduled release date. Well, on February 16th, 2023, the developer released a devlog where they talked about the journey of the game so far. The website is still up, but if you click add to wishlist, it just takes you to the front page of Steam because you can't actually add it to your wishlist because the game doesn't exist on Steam anymore. This game hasn't stolen anyone's money yet, so it's not a scam yet, but the developers have been caught lying. They've been caught copying other developers' work. They've promised them.
They didn't steal your money during that time frame. They stole investor money. That's what they stole. Okay, they stole your money after it launched.
Moon, and they have a history of selling unfinished games and then walking away from them. Hopefully Fantastic keeps delaying their game until it's finished, but I wouldn't spend any money on this one until it's proven to be a finished, playable product. There's just way too many red flags at this point.
If you want to be kept up to date on how this all unfolds, be sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification button. And maybe even like the video and leave a comment if you're enjoying it, for the algorithm gods. Next up, Dream World, a game described as being the infinite open world MMO where you could sculpt the world and create anything you wanted with a massive catalog of objects in one single world with millions of other players.
Just so we're clear, this is all Unreal Engine 4, and you could do all this in Unreal Engine 4 in real time. It's not hard to code, it's actually built into the engine itself. That's all this footage is right here you're seeing. Keep that in mind.
You could explore thousands of unique biomes and fight and tame Dreamworld's incredible creatures. This game claimed it would be the last game you ever played. This should have been the first red flag because the slogan doesn't even make sense. The Dreamworld Kickstarter, led by Zachary Kaplan and Garrison Bellick, made a lot of promises that were more or less impossible to fulfill. But who are they? What is Zachary Kaplan's history that allows him to believe he is capable of taking these people's money and delivering on his massive promise? Well, he opened a crowdfund for a speaker you wear on your chest back in 2015 because he claims he was hit by a car not once but twice while running with his earphones in.
So he's stupid and a scammer. Look at the guy's face. You can just tell he's full of shit. I'm not trying to make fun of the guy for the way he looks, but some things are just dead giveaways.
This man doesn't need a speaker on his chest, he needs to stop running in the freeway. Eventually, he stopped that crowdfund and promised all of his backers they would be able to purchase these speakers in just a few short months. That was in 2015, and here we are 8 years later, and the website is still up with the product still listed as coming soon. After that, he started a clothing brand, and it doesn't seem that panned out for him either. And neither of these projects are particularly horrible ideas. I won't fault anyone for trying to be an inventor or an entrepreneur. By themselves, these ideas are completely fine. The problem arises when, with those 2 failed projects behind him, he decided he would then use everything he learned about creating wearable speakers and t-shirts and applied that incredibly relevant knowledge to creating a massively multiplayer online game. Zachary Kaplan and his partner Garrison Bellick would create a Kickstarter and start hyping up their new game, and
Just so we're clear, the reason why they could get the speaker out is because most places, if you're listening to like profane music, they'll tell you to turn it off or turn it down. That's probably why it never got cleared. Also, probably never delivered on it because no one's going to finance something like that.
fact that it would be able to have millions of people play together and modify the entire world at will to their heart's content. Fortunately, they didn't mislead backers by saying that they had come up with the solution to all of the problems that prevented this technology from existing already, because that would have been lying to their investors.
The largest digital world that exists today can only have thousands of people. Then we came up with a solution that allows us to have millions.
They did. You know what it's called? Remove the graphics, make it a text-based game. That's the solution. No graphics, you can have 1 million players in there. It'll just be a fancy chat room, but that's it. If you fell for this shit, I don't know what to say to you.
Oh, okay, well, that's not a good sign, is it? Naturally, all of this took place where many of these stories take place, Kickstarter. While other MMOs with $400 million budgets were struggling to achieve a fraction of what Dreamworld was promising, these two were going to do it all with a Kickstarter campaign for $10,000. That's right, $10,000 and 2 people to develop something multi-million-dollar AAA studios haven't accomplished with hundreds of developers at their...
Again, a text-based game is what you make with that kind of budget.
their disposal. What could go wrong? In what I can only describe as the result of people pulling out their wallets while temporarily detached from their brains, this Kickstarter would somehow hit its goal, and then some, earning a total of $64,706. Despite the fact that it looked like every ounce of footage for this game was nothing more than random assets from the Unreal Engine store slapped into the game with no rhyme or reason. It looked like that because that's exactly what it was, as Callum upped improved on his YouTube channel by showing each asset pack in the store. Even the main protagonist featured in all of the shots is the default mannequin from the Unreal Engine.
Also, gotta remember too, like, there's also gameplay presets in Unreal Engine that you could pick. I think one of them is the, I think it's the miner, I think it's called, where you can literally destroy the world and craft it the way you want. It's literally a gameplay feature built inside of Unreal Engine. You can just do that, put it in there, and you're good to go. That's probably what they did. And they fed all this stuff from some of the free assets on Unreal Engine. Well, maybe a couple of paid assets, but mostly free assets. And they built this automatically to make it seem like, oh yeah, we know what we're doing. Most people never downloaded Unreal Engine, so they don't know. They can't run it on most computers at that time.
Red flags were everywhere, but somehow that didn't stop 4 people from donating nearly $2,000 to the game. Once you have backed the game, you were promised access to the pre-alpha. However, the fine print stipulated that you wouldn't actually receive access to the pre-alpha until you also forced 2 of your friends to back the project as well. It's things like this that start to push this entire Kickstarter farther away from ignorance and closer to malice. As soon as the Kickstarter closed and they had all of their money, they went to work on the game, right? Well, no, they immediately went on vacation, causing everyone to wonder if they'd run with the money. They would eventually come back, however, and resume work on the game. They started a Discord server that used 14 to 16-year-olds as moderators so they wouldn't have to pay anyone. Like many of the stories on this list, this is one that just kept on giving. Even Zachary's ex-girlfriend chimed in on the whole situation to explain that the 9 years of game development experience Zachary claimed he had was actually nothing more than him writing ideas down on paper, at best. Garrison's claims of being
If that's the case, I'm like a 30-year game veteran, developer veteran, which is not true.
a former employee at Google were also a bit misleading.
Well, maybe a little bit. I'm messing with game engines back in 1999, so who knows?
As it turns out, he was nothing more than an intern for a few months. She also explains that she broke up with Zach for a number of reasons, one of which being that when she went to get her wedding ring refitted so that she could actually wear it, the jeweler explained that it was so fake that it would break in half if they tried. I'm not at all materialistic and I don't care about the size or the quality of a wedding ring. I'd argue it's the least important aspect of any marriage. But
first and foremost, the face already gives a pretty bad impression right off the bat. Why would you fall for that to begin with? And top that off, he gives you a fake ring. You kind of reap what you sow at that point.
buying your fiancée a ring so fake it can't be resized and then gaslighting her for asking about it shows severe lack of communication and maturity. But this was some pretty damning information. We basically confirmed that both of these guys greatly misled their investors where it pertained to their previous experience in this type of a project. Fortunately for them, they would have a chance to prove all of their doubters wrong. As with all things like this, eventually the product would be delivered or not. On May 20th of 2021, we'd finally get to see Dreamworld in all of its glory. The moment everyone had been waiting for. Content creator Skiasso posted a video.
Asmongold said it best. You have to have balls to release what they did.
Himself playing the alpha, and let's just say, it was somehow worse than anyone expected. This footage was pure nightmare fuel. It looked like something that someone's toddler could have made in about 5 minutes of spamming random assets into an open world in the Unreal Engine. It was unforgivably bad, probably because that's exactly what Zachary did. In fact, I'm positive someone could have made.
You can also tell by if you watch the background there, you can see how there's sort of a wall of fog. They put that in there because the performance in the game was so bad, they had to put that in there to cover up some of the assets to get the run in double-digit frame rates. I'm not even kidding.
Something far more attractive given just 5 minutes in the Unreal Engine, leaving everyone wondering where did the money go and what was the time spent on. But hey, maybe the game just needed more time. It was an ambitious project after all. Well, that major reveal was 2 years ago. So where's the game now? Nearly 2 years after becoming quote-unquote playable. To their credit, they did continue to try and at least give the impression that they were trying to improve the game for some time, posting weekly updates on their website and on YouTube. However, those updates mysteriously stopped a little over 2 months ago.
For all their work, their YouTube channel in its 2 years of existence has managed to gather about 500 subscribers.
So, what is the future of Dreamworld? I don't think there is one. These guys set out to make an ambitious game and failed. That in itself would have been acceptable if it weren't for the fact that they misled people, claiming they had years of experience in an industry that they didn't, in an effort to get their money. Claiming that they had a solution to a problem that prevented games like this from existing in the first place when they didn't, which begs the question, at which point do we call these things a con? At what point do they slide past ineptitude and into malicious intent? Let me know down in the comments below. These guys are $65,000 richer, and all it cost them was their entire reputation.
Again, I also have to remind you that they had to do, again, when we build an MMO, it's two different things you got to build. You got to build the assets you send to the player, and you had the source code was on the server. They had to do that to make this game work, which it probably didn't. It probably was like just everything was on your side. It was probably a peer-to-peer game, which probably made it suck really bad, which is why it's laggy as it is.
Zachary Kaplan and Garrison Bellick left quite a trail of evidence on the internet at this point, telling the world exactly what type of people they are. Thanks to YouTubers like Callum Upton and Kira TV, it's been incredibly well documented, and I think it's safe to say no one in their right mind would work with these guys or give them money in the future. Next up, we have Identity. Identity is another game put on Kickstarter way back in 2015 that promised the moon. It was going to deliver not just any MMO experience, but the MMO experience, where you could do literally anything in a game full of other people doing literally anything they wanted. The world and its economy would be determined by the players playing the game. What did they need from the public? Just $150,000 to deliver an experience that AAA studios would spend hundreds of millions on. But this was 2015, before we'd seen a ton of scam Kickstarter projects materialize and fail to deliver. People's guards were down, and so they managed to collect 10 times their goal with over $1.5 million earned. How did they do this? Well, a handful of assets purchased from the Unreal Engine shop and placed into a world, of course.
Oh, wait, hang on. PC and Mac. PC? Possible. Mac? No, because on Mac, you got to redo your code from scratch, and you have to convert it to Mac code, which is not easy or cheap. And even then, you got to get past Apple's their quality control, because they don't just let anything on Macs sometimes. Sometimes they do, but if you want to get a game on there, you really got to think twice.
Well, a handful of assets purchased from the Unreal Engine shop and placed into a world, of course. We are starting to see a trend here, aren't we? Pledgers were even able to spend $5,000 for packages that would allow them to go into the office and game with the development team. Except there wasn't one. There was no office, and there was no development team, just two friends. The studio was only just created immediately prior to this Kickstarter by John Vanderswet. One of the consistent problems with all of these scams is the lies. Every development studio on this list has a habit of lying. These lies were a large part of why people were willing to give their money to.
Come on, these are like GTA 5 graphics. Like, you're not doing this with two people. You're just not going to do it. It took them 300 people and $265 million to make GTA 5. That's a single player game. That's before they even did the online stuff. So, like, how are you going to do that with this, which is two people and $150,000 budget, which ballooned to like $1.8 million?
To these projects in the first place. It is these lies that should absolutely come back to haunt them in court, but for some reason never do. In the case of John Vanderswet, his lie was that he had invested lots of his own money in the game and that he just needed the last $150,000 to get it over the finish line. He even went as far as saying, should we meet our goal here in Kickstarter?
Also to remind you guys, in Unreal Engine 4, there are some free assets you could download. I think this is some of them. And you can literally just inject code into the game so easily, because it's already built to the engine. So you can make a full day-night cycle. You can make it go faster, slower. You can have NPCs walk around, give them basic AI. You could do all that in the engine itself. It's really not that hard. I'd say maybe a couple days to a week, you'll have a playable demo that looks like this. So you can see how they get these up there, and most people don't know this stuff. other ones supported this. They don't know how engines work or how easy it is to make a game in an engine just to play one. But when you try to make original content, that's what takes all the work and all the funding to do all that.
We'll have everything we need to ensure that Identity gets completed. As mentioned, the game received 10 times what he asked for. John received $1.5 million. So according to him, this was now a slam dunk. He needed $150,000 but received $1.5 million. The estimated delivery of this game, according to the Kickstarter page, December of 2016. The Kickstarter closed and they began accepting additional funding on their own personal website. It wasn't until 2016, the year the game was due to release, that people started becoming suspicious of the project, noticing that outside of the initial video of some pre-made assets placed into Unreal Engine, the only thing the developers had produced for the public were some sketches and some conversations. Yet another thing this game has in common with the rest of the games on this list. With the beta supposedly just months away, the developers still had zero footage of the game to show to the backers. Heck, they couldn't even manage to share a screenshot. The developers explained that they were simply too busy to communicate with the public due to the fact that they were hard at work on the game. So they were claiming they didn't have time to do this.
Simply hitting the print screen button here will do the trick. The image is now on your clipboard, ready to paste into Paint or other imaging programs.
Yeah, that makes total sense. It's
We're going to download an OBS or use the snip command. You can use that too in Windows. It's easy.
It's at this point that the people with a brain started to realize something was wrong, while the zealots without a brain attacked them for questioning their developers. This is the stage we see all too often in these publicly funded game development cycles. The first people to talk critically about the game and question how realistic its plans are crucified by those who have chosen to simply believe in their new higher power without questioning it. A couple of months before the beta due date, they announced that something playable would be available in 2017.
Let me give you a story about a game I was looking forward to way back in 2005. It was a game called War Devil, and it was done by another studio. I forgot the name of them. That game looked promising, and it looked really good, like movie quality good. And I was thinking, oh, this would be great. Can't wait to play this. 6 years later, it got canceled, and it just went through development hell. Like, if you look it up, it looked pretty damn good. Maybe a little too unrealistic in some ways, but what we had at the time was actually kind of predictable. So maybe it could have been done. Well, who knows?
This was a delay, but not a massive one. They followed this announcement up with an actual video of gameplay, much to everyone's surprise. The video received hundreds of thousands of views and was mostly well received by the audience. But now, with 2017 coming and going, despite the promise of a playable beta releasing that year, an announcement would come on November 3rd, 2017, stating that something playable would be released on March 21st, 2018. It wouldn't be the whole game, but rather just a small module, not the entire world that you could do anything you wanted, anywhere you wanted, but instead one small town square. At this point, Asylum had raised over $800,000, over 5 times what it asked for. It was also behind schedule and proposing to deliver a small fraction of the game that was promised, but at least it was something tangible that players would finally be able to boot up and play. On February 12th, 2018, they finally released a trailer with actual gameplay footage, although this footage was incredibly underwhelming. As much as backers wanted to see this gameplay, they were ultimately disappointed with what they got. This game still looked like little more than some basic assets slapped into the Unreal Engine, something we're growing all too familiar with now. Backers had one thing to keep their hopes up: the playable beta was only weeks away. That is, until Asylum delayed it again, but this time only by a month. Given players had waited this long, 1 extra month was not a big deal. Then, days before the launch, they delayed it again, this time indefinitely. And why not? They had at this point made over $1 million by delivering absolutely nothing. Players still knew next to nothing about the game, something that seems to be quite key to getting thousands of people to part with millions of dollars. Tell them you're creating something amazing while also telling them nothing at all, and watch how easily a fool and his money are separated. On November 30th, 2018, the game would finally be playable on Steam, or at least the Town Square module, which is just a name for a handful of buildings slapped together around a few streets that players could walk around. Players could no longer imagine what the game would be. Instead, they had to face what it actually was: an unplayable, unsalvageable mess. And so, with the illusion shattered, players would stop sending funding to the game. The game instantly received a mostly negative review on Steam, the worst that you could get. So where is Asylum Entertainment and its MMO 5 years later? Almost none of the bugs or problems that existed at launch have been fixed, but it gets better. It seems John Vanderswet, emboldened by successfully scamming his backers, couldn't help himself. In 2020, he would go on to explain that the studio needed more money to finish Identity, the game that had basically seen no progress in almost 2 years since its release. He explained that another developer had asked Asylum to be the publisher of their mobile game. Now, you might be wondering, why would any developer in their right mind go to this man to publish their game, given his 100% track record of failure in delivering games as a studio? Well, what he did not tell everyone is that the developer that approached him to publish their game was him. Yeah, he created a second studio to develop a mobile game while he was supposedly working on Identity. And he needed us to give him more money to fund this new game so that Identity would have the money it needed to finish. He even created a brand new Kickstarter campaign for the new mobile game called Furballs. This is perhaps the most infuriating part of people getting away with this. They dive right into it again. He claimed that none of the money from Identity went into the new mobile game and that he only worked on it on his free time while he wasn't working on Identity. Two things that are all but certainly a lie. Fortunately, this time the Kickstarter campaign would be a complete failure. People were not as easily fooled by John given the reputation that he had now rightfully earned for himself. Kira TV did some great research on John after the fact and discovered that he had consistently moved into a more expensive home despite John claiming that he lost money on the venture and had no other form of employment. One could theorize that a substantial amount of the money that was due to be invested into Identity actually was just used to buy John a nicer house. If that's the case, would anyone be surprised? Recently, Asylum put up a post a few months back at the end of 2022, reaffirming that the game is still the studio's main priority, though they are also working on other projects now. Tragically, the game itself is still available on Steam for $30, though with the reviews that it's garnered, I doubt anyone is falling for it. After 8 years and $1.6 million raised, all John was able to produce was a few assets slapped into Unreal Engine in a completely unplayable state. Whether it was malicious intent or complete ignorance, I would never invest in John Vanderswet ever again. He's proven that he's willing to embellish on his experience as a developer and failed to reach unrealistic goals, while moving into a nice house and attempting to cash in on a mobile game that he developed while supposedly working on a game that people gave him $1.5 million to develop. John Vanderswet has a new house, but he lost his reputation, proven by the fact that his second Kickstarter earned him a whopping $430.
Skip the last game. It's a dragon game, and it was kind of successful, but we'll leave that alone. Let's try another one. Slopes has some good ones. Let me see. There we go.
A few months back, I covered the top 10 best looking Kickstarter games that sadly never got funded. And due to the popularity of that video, I've decided to do the video that pretty much every other person in the comments section suggested I do next. Failed Kickstarters that did get funded. Right, okay, so to start my journey off, I thought the infamous Mighty No. 9 with its constant delays and eventual under par release would be a good place to start. But oh no, compared to what I talk about on this list, that game can pretty much be rivaled with Mega Man 2 in regards to quality. Mainly,
I thought the game would be good too, but it got really, really bad. If anything, it showed how much of an asshole and kind of a scam that Keiji Inafune is. He mismanaged that project up the ass.
because, well, it actually got released. You see, pretty much everything on this list not only exceeded the funding needed to make the project a reality, but actually took the combined total of $709,486 from 14,773 backers. Yes, I did the math. And well, they either never finished the game, went bankrupt, or just disappeared, running away with the money, leaving all those backers empty-handed. Hey guys, I'm Daniel Ibbotson, and here are 5 video game Kickstarters that didn't deliver. Number 1. Multiplayer survival games are pretty big business, if you get them done right. And the Stomping Land, a game that involves you trying to survive in a dinosaur-filled land, is an exciting concept. The Kickstarter campaign video looks great and managed to raise $114,060 from 4,427 backers of a tiny $20,000 goal. That's almost 6 times the amount requested. How the hell did they fuck this one up? Well, turns out since the game was funded on June 6, 2013, updates were frequent, constantly telling backers a few times a month in most instances what was going on with the project. And on May 30th, 2014, early access keys made their way into the hands of all of the backers that pledged the reward to get them. The game was being talked about on Steam community pages and the game's subreddit. Everything was fine. Then, nothing. Everything stopped, with the website, Twitter page and Facebook page all disappearing, leaving nothing but a long list of angry commenters on the Kickstarter page. Even modeler Vlad Konstantinov never got a reply from lead guy Alex Fundora saying that he didn't even get paid for his latest work, and no messages were replied to, so he had no choice but to sell what he had done to pay his team for the work that they have done. That's it. I wish I had more to tell you, but it looks obvious that this, at least by the time the alpha was released, was a scam. Alex not only grabbed the remaining money and ran away, but also put the unfinished game back on sale on Steam Greenlight, with his final ever post being, "It has had a year of progress and will continue to undergo production, with frequent updates until the end of 2015. And that is it. Number 2. For anyone out there that has watched the previous Kickstarter video, you'll know I'm a bit of a board and card gamer outside of video gaming and YouTubing. Which is why I'm happy as hell to not have known about Zico. If I knew about the Kickstarter, I would have backed it. However, at least 973 backers did know about it, as it was able to beat the $250,000 goal by raising $257,870. For those that don't know, Zico was originally a board and card game that was marketed as Pokemon with a purpose. The campaign video is actually quite heartwarming, explaining how Amy Tucker made the game to raise awareness of endangered animals and thankfully, for a while at least, actually succeeded. It ended up getting interest from major American chains and coffee shops before the recession happened, which resulted in almost all of those connections pulling out. If you go over to BoardGameGeek.com, an absolute must of a site for any tabletop fans, the people that did actually play that original card game seemed to quite enjoy it, and the feedback was great. A true...
Believe it or not, when I was going through classes at Folsom University, one of the first things they teach you about game design is learn about card games and board games. Learn about rules, learn about how to set them up properly, and when you do, you understand how video games are made more easily. That's one of the best advice I ever got.
Really brilliant card experience for all the family. Sadly, even though the game was a critical success due to a lot of the major partners pulling out, the company went under. The Kickstarter campaign was Amy's chance to bring Zico back from the brink. The game had amazing artwork and a great team behind it, and even had legends such as Mike Williams and Nolan Bushnell working on it. Yes, the Nolan Bushnell, the guy who is known to many as the father of video games, being the guy who started Atari and Chuck E. Cheese. These guys will actually be helping create the game. Anyway, funding was successful a mere 12 hours before cut-off point, and that's when updates started to slow down. Sure, you had the standard survey, and thanks to all involved, including a special thanks to Michael Williams, Zico's biggest fan, who I can only assume is the guy that put down $10,000 to help the project. But then 6 months passed before any kind of an update. Then another 2 months after that. Not updating the game's progress, but instead just saying that rewards are still being worked on before being shipped out. Another month passes with an update that explains that there have been a number of issues that we've had to address, and we assure you the rewards will be coming. Many thanks for your patience. That was on June the 10th, 2013, 3 months after the estimated delivery date. And that's it. until you look in the comments section. On December 14th and December 17th, 2013, Zico posted a comment explaining that the company creating the game called Umba, the company that created the campaign called Wabba, and game designer Amy Tucker couldn't reach an agreement, and boom, Wabba went bankrupt. It was explained that a lawsuit by one of the previous directors of Hairy Entertainment was put in place. Another company that had previously purchased Zico when it was a card game for $80,000. Plus another $100,000 still to pay to complete the purchase. And no one knows, apart from the people making the game, where the rest of the money went. But don't feel bad. According to the game's creator, that $257,870 actually came from friends and family of the members of their company. And the number of Zico players able to willingly support the project was actually less than 40 people. So let me get this straight. You managed to get at least 933 family and friends to back a project that less than 40 people were interested in? If that is true, which it surely can't be, that's one member of the family that's definitely getting knocked off the Christmas list. Number 3. The fall of Nemesis Clash of the Kaijujin, or KCO1 as it was thankfully abbreviated, is the final word in giant monster battle games. It takes the core team and technology from Pipeworks' Atari Godzilla fighting games and merges them with the design input and creative output of our amazing fans. Yep, sign me up. I didn't know about this game when it was live, thankfully, but after looking at the campaign video, which claims that this will be the ultimate monster fighting game with direct input from the fans, well, it would have been right up my street. However, what have we learned from videos like this? Never back games that show no real game footage, and
Never back a game unless you see actual game footage. Actual made game footage.
this game only showed one tiny bit of animation. Hell, nice artwork though, am I right? Either way, 1,247 backers did help fund the project's goal of $100,000 and even exceeded it by getting the project up to $112,513. And who knows how much was put towards the project using the PayPal donation option. Officially, the game is not cancelled according to the developer, who actually posted a reply to forum backers as recently as the 23rd of November this year. However, the game's progress is suspended. That means the company is no longer actively doing development on the game. Apparently money was not the issue, but instead it was the unexpected death of environment artist Ron Claiborne that halted what was several months of good development on the game up to this point. And sadly it started a ripple of team members not being able to work with an environment artist and no longer are able to work on the project whatsoever. Money was not an issue, and in this instance at least, the main developer, Simon Strange, still responds to the odd comment on the Kickstarter page, and on his Sunstone Game Forum page too. One of the sadder stories on this list that in my opinion is doubtful to ever see a proper release. Here's to you Sunstone Games, let's hope you actually do get to continue working on the game. And here's to the 5 backers who pledged $250 apiece, the 50 backers who pledged $500 apiece, and the 2 backers who pledged $5,000 apiece. Ouch.
That was kind of sad.
Number 4. Alex Peake really wanted this game to happen. Code Hero, a game that teaches you to make games, was a Kickstarter backed by 7,459 backers, spending $170,954 of a $100,000 target. Yep, people were obviously really into the look of the game. And during the campaign, the guys over at Primer Labs were constantly updating the site page with celebration videos of hitting their target, updating fans almost every single day, and then after the Kickstarter ended on February 24th, 2012, the updates, well, they actually continued fairly frequently. Every few months or so, giving those 7,000 odd backers an update as to what was happening, although those updates were not always great. Just like practically every Kickstarter going, it got delayed from its expected February 2014 release date several times over. This, mixed with updates becoming more and more infrequent, was followed up on March the 4th, 2014, over 2 years after the expected release date, showing 22 6th graders playtesting the game and the text. I'm sad to say that I'm probably not going to be able to update as regular or as often. But even though you may not hear from us as often, we'll still be working on Code Hero and moving forward with development. This was a common theme with this project. The infrequent updates that they did give were 99% of the time letting backers know that the game was getting delayed, or to give bad news like fewer updates or that they needed more time, but hardly ever giving any more information or explaining the reasons why. This, as you would expect, left the comments section to become a pretty dark place of nothing but angry backers who had lost their money, claiming that they would be asking Kickstarter to get their money back. Money that they were soon to be discovered had completely gone. Peak paid between $4,000 and $5,000 a month for each programmer, of which he claims he had 10 employees. One of which was David Lopez, a game designer from California who quit working at Red Giant Studios to the offer of $55,000 a year. However, this actually equated to every paycheck bouncing and Peak having to pay Lopez $800 from his personal account. David Lopez said in an interview regarding this that I gave him tons of time. I quit my job in the gaming industry to come and help this dude out. A couple of weeks later, he disappears and drops the whole project. Backers had to search far and wide for this information, as the final update to them was on April the 4th, 2014. Code Hero, April update, goodbyes and code-based soapbox. I suggest going over to the site and checking it out. It's surprising how little is actually explained. And that's a real shame, leaving the comment section being backers updating other backers. In a nutshell, the money run out, and Peak was unable to get outsider funding, asking his team to work for free, which they didn't. Legal action for the larger contributors have gone forward, but Peak says that they will not get their refunds until after the game is released. That is, if it ever is released.
I can tell you what happened. 2014. Guess what game came out that year? Little Microsoft project called Project Spark. And it was exactly what this game is trying to be, except with much nicer graphics and even more accessibility. It's discontinued, but if you have it on your account when you download it for free, you can still play it. I still have it on Microsoft account, and you can find it on disc. In some places, like look online far enough, you can find it on disc. It's for Xbox One, so it should work still. It's just that you have to launch the game twice. Once to get past the server check, and then launch it again for it to run normally. So that's probably what happened.
Strangely enough, Code Hero's website actually has reappeared, with updates going up and giving you the chance to even pre-order the soundtrack. However, sadly, nothing is being done with those 7,459 backers that helped the project get off the ground in the beginning. And the fact that those backers aren't even getting updates really does go to show how little Alex Peak actually cares about his backers.
He just didn't know how to manage a project like that. That was the problem.
Number 5. This game actually asked for the least, ironically titled Greedmonger. Disappointing 667 people by taking $90,132 of a $30,000 goal. But that's not all. Including the PayPal donations, they apparently exceeded over $100,000. Who the hell knows exactly how many people and how much was wasted on this project? Well, Jason Appleton probably knows.
Hi everyone, this is Jason Appleton, producer and lead designer of Greedmonger.
The game was a 3D, free-to-play sandbox MMORPG with a focus on crafting, economics, and politics in a world where you can literally do whatever you want.
Another MMO. Oh, this is going to work out.
Sounds good, right? Well, I'm sure if you're into that sort of thing it is. Plus, it's probably good for all of those backers that were looking to get land in the game as part of high rewards in an attempt to sell that land for real money when the game eventually came out. Ah, good old flippers. He who dares wins. You see, the biggest problem here, and one to keep in mind the most, is that this is not a typical small indie platformer. It's not an RPG, it's not a puzzle game. It's an MMORPG. Probably the most expensive and hardest games to ever make.
Again, because you have to build all the assets in the world, and you have to build the server also, put the code on the server. So you have to pay for the server constantly to keep that up, and then you have to make sure the game is updated properly. It's extremely expensive.
And Electric Crow, a company that has never released a single game to date with limited funds, was the company that was behind it. However, limited funds technically shouldn't be an issue, because after the Kickstarter finished and the shitstorm that was Greedmonger started to unfold, Jason actually stated in a video clearing his name that he is in fact a credible guy to take on a project like this. And that he already had enough money to make a server farm even if the Kickstarter failed. Yep, money was not a problem to Jason, as he was probably the biggest entrepreneur I'd ever seen.
Server farm, let's look at the price of that real quick. Average cost $50,000, $100,000. That's not cheap. I think it's per month. That's expensive. So yeah, he's got enough money for that. Yeah, right.
Just looking down the guy's personal Facebook shows him doing more jobs than all of his backers combined. There's his web design work, his mortgage consultancy work, club promoting, voiceover work, DJ competitions, jiu-jitsu competitions, and his very own marketing SEO company. Yep, Jason is not ashamed to get his hands dirty.
So one and done is if we are with a couple, then once it happens once, that's it. It's not going to happen again.
Looking at it, you'd think he's the sort of guy to very much get the job done. Well, except for finishing Greedmonger, that is. After scrolling back for a couple of years, I couldn't find anything related to the game whatsoever. Now, that's enough about Jason. James Proctor, the lead programmer, wasn't any better. And in the Unity forums, Unity being the game engine that they were going to be using to make the game, he was starting new projects every 5 minutes, none of which ever got completed. As much as James thought he was probably the world's greatest coder, he was far, far from it. Greedmonger was an MMORPG with hardly anything made from scratch, and instead the majority of that Kickstarter money was going on store-bought, already made assets to literally just paste into James's bare-bone world. Eventually a build of the game was shown 3 years after the Kickstarter campaign ended, and as expected, it was awful. Problems continued when James quit after 3 years of being on the project and went on to explain how working with Jason was abysmal. Apparently the deal was that he would not be getting paid until completion, and then he would be getting a cut of the profits. Because of this, James played the sympathy card, explaining that he couldn't continue to afford the long hours spent on the game, and tried to leave on at least one occasion beforehand, but couldn't do so because he was being threatened to be sued by Jason if he did. Keep in mind, no contract was signed between the two, and all they had was their Skype conversations. Now the story gets even stranger when you find out that James was actually disabled with depression and couldn't leave his house. The depression was so severe that he would get panic attacks if he saw large crowds. And this was how he was able to get by making the game on absolutely no salary at all. He was getting disability allowance, meaning that $100,000 at least spent on the game was going on other people's hard work, buying off the shelf Unity assets, and the creation of the game was being funded by the taxpayer. Anyway, like I said, James, the sole developer of the game, quit. Jason left the project, presumably taking the remaining Kickstarter money with him, and now he's gone silent. Not even going by Kickstarter's own rules of explaining where the money actually went. And what we have left is a lot of pissed off backers with nothing to show for the crazy amount of money that was spent on the project. The website's gone, and almost all talk of the game, other than the understandably upset backers in the comments section of the campaign, has become non-existent. That is other than a random update from James from time to time, who still has a quick go on building the game in between other projects, adding even more Unity store-bought assets, and let's face it, never ever being able to finish it.
Just so we're clear, when you have store-bought assets, they're only there to help you practice your game design. Some are free, some are not. Okay? They just help you so you can code your game properly and get things in there and what you want to do. That's the only reason why they exist. Now, some you could buy a license for to sell, but that's very rare when you see those show up.
Hey there guys, whether you're watching this on Larry Bundy Jr.'s channel or...
And that's going to be it for today. So yeah, Fortnite was down again. I checked it and it's down. So hopefully I'll see you tomorrow night, tomorrow morning at 3 a.m. And we get back to Fortnite. I probably could have played Schedule 1, but I said no, just watch some videos, kick back and relax for a little while. I was a little hungry earlier. All right, so thanks for joining me. Hope you had a great time, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Take care.